Ladies and gentlemen, boys and squirrels, welcome to David and Alex's Totally Rad podcast. That's totally not a podcast at all, actually. We're your hosts. I'm Alex, and
I'm David, yo.
This is David, yo. We're mentors, we're actors, we're all-around advocates, and we're on a journey to find others like us who may be a little different, but use their uniqueness to become mega mentors and role models with us here at Camp No Limits. So tune in as we deep dive and get to know some of these superstars.
All right, what's going on, Alex Barone? How you doing today?
I'm doing great, David Harrell. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited about
You look tan.
I do. I feel tan. I feel like I'm at this virtual beach for this virtual, not really a podcast. But I did go to an actual beach not too long ago, and I think I did bronze just a little bit. So that, in fact, leads me to our first sponsor again, because it is the summer.
Sure.
And to have a not real podcast, obviously, Alex, we need not real advertisers and sponsors. So the sponsor again this week is sunscreen, because you might be socially distancing, but that sun not going to social distance from your face. So you got to get the sunscreen all up on the face, on the arms, the neck, the nose, especially. You got to watch that nose. So thanks to sunscreen, no particular brand of sunscreen, just sunscreen in general. From my face to your face, Mr. Barone.
Thank you, David, for that. We do have one more sponsor for you guys. David, let's face it, right? We all get the blues sometimes. Am I right? Sometimes It just might hit us out of nowhere. But guess what? For better life, try saying some funny words, some yummy words sometimes. If you're feeling blue or getting those blues taken away and you need a smile, try saying some of the fun and fantastical words like schnitzel. Say that with me, David. Schnitzel.
Schnitzel.
Papyrus. Euthanasia. Vavavoom. Bumfuzzle. Gardyloo. Taradiddle. Schnickerschnee. Wittershins. One of my favorites. Collywobbles. Gubbins. And our always favorite, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. God, I feel good. Oh my gosh. Which one will you choose today, David?
Of course, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious is a lot of fun to say, and it does make you feel fantastic. Alex, what about the guest that we have coming up for this podcast? I'm pretty excited about it.
She's a queen. She's a queen, David. I don't know if there's more to say than that, but there's actually so much to say.
She's kind of like she's an awesome role model. She's kind of like the queen mentor of our Camp No Limits, maybe. Do you think so? Is it fair to say?
I think that's absolutely fair to say, yeah.
Okay.
And speaking of supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, Nicole Grehn is that word.
She is that word. So without any further ado, let's welcome Nicole Grehn, the supercalifragilisticexpialidocious queen of our mentors. Here she is.
Hi.
Hey,
Yay.
Nicole.
It worked.
All
Hey,
right.
guys.
Welcome.
How's it going?
It's good. I'm so happy to be on the podcast. That's totally not a podcast.
It's true. It's not even remotely a podcast because on Zoom, we're not even pretending. We're just using it because it's a fun word to say.
Right.
Alex also we're sponsored by Fun Words, I think. So, and Alex was sharing some fun words, one being supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, which made us think of you.
Because I am Mary Poppins.
You are kind of the Mary Poppins. Alex says you are the queen of the Camp No Limits mentors. So he gave you that sort of title, which I think is pretty cool.
Wow, that's very sweet.
I have to agree. So
Nicole, is that voodoo doll of David Harrell behind you?
Yeah, I keep it there, just in case
Right.
the Zoom doesn't work.
Sure.
Then I start to make him do things like type and get the
Right.
Zoom to work. Yeah.
Poke it.
Can you feel that, David? Can you feel that,
feel
David?
that?
Start shaking it.
Oh man. Well, Nicole, thank you again. I just for folks who may not have seen any of the previous David and Alex, Totally Rad podcast. That is totally not a podcast episodes before. What we're doing is we're just kind of having a fun sort of way of having conversations with some of the mentors and other sort of support folks that we work with at Camp No Limits. Because what's kind of been frustrating about this year, obviously, with the plague that we are living through is we haven't had our camps. But one thing about, having camps all around the country is a lot of times we don't get to see mentors all around the country. Not all the mentors are able to sort of be at every camp. So sometimes they're mentors that some campers may have gotten to know and gotten to hang out with, but other campers who attend different camps may not have gotten to meet them. And same thing with families. So it's great to sort of get to know our mentors a little bit better, because I think it's such an important part of the work that we do, is having adults with limb difference and limb loss sort of living the life of camp and sort of bringing their own experience in. So thank you again for agreeing to do this, Nicole. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I feel honored. I'm on David and Alex's Totally Rad podcast. It's not a podcast. This thing's gonna go viral. I can feel it.
It's cool.
It's a pretty big deal.
It's definitely not like Mark Maron, big deal. But it's I think, Alex, I would say we're pretty close to Dax Shepard now, right? I mean, like,
absolutely.
Sure, yeah. It's like in between like Charlie Rose and Dax Shepard.
Yeah.
Wait, is Charlie Rose
better?
I don't know if is he still around? Didn't he leave? So
rest in peace.
On a whole different tip. So Nicole, can you start us off? Tell us a little bit about you and sort of how like where you grew up, where you're from, sort of that.
Sure.
Just start us off.
Well, I'm currently in Brooklyn, New York, because I just moved to New York City. Whoop, whoop, New York.
Represent. Nice.
Big Apple. Small girl, large city. I'm from, big dreams. But I'm a girl with big dreams from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is not very big. I grew up there and I never left. I moved around for college and things like that in the actual state, but I grew up there. Yep. And I couldn't wait to leave. I love my city and I love my state, but it was time for me to go. But yeah, so I was a cheerleader in high school. I went to college to get my bachelor's degree. At the time, thinking that I wanted to be a physician assistant. Actually, I had a lot of things I thought I wanted to be. I was in college for like 5 years, just trying to figure out what the heck I wanted to do. And then I realized that I really did like the medical field. I thought I wanted to be a physician assistant, ended up applying to PA school, getting in, and this was in 2015, and I was supposed to leave for school, and this school was in California, so that would have been a pretty big move. You would have loved that, Alex, huh? I would have been closer to you.
Oh my God.
And so I was supposed to leave August 2015, and I ended up collapsing in June of 2015, and ended up, because of that heart condition that caused me to collapse, I ended up losing both of my legs above the knee. And so that sort of derailed my plans, actually my whole life. I have a genetic heart condition that is for sudden cardiac death. And there are no signs or symptoms leading up to it. I had no idea that I had it. I just collapsed out of nowhere one day in a gas station in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. And I just so happened to be very lucky to collapse in front of a hospital. So I was taken care of really, really quickly, but I ended up going into cardiac arrest 78 times. And because of that, I wasn't getting blood flow to my legs, and they died and they had to amputate. So I woke up and my legs were gone. And at the time I really thought, oh my gosh, my life is over. This is it. Everything I've worked so hard for. I've always taken care of my family. I've always been the caregiver, and now the roles have switched and I didn't know how to handle it. But yeah, I definitely ended up meeting the right people at the right time to put me on the path to being right here in front of you on the Totally Rad podcast, on a podcast.
Well, Nicole, talk just a little bit before we kind of get, because I want to sort of take a little like reverse a second.
Sure.
You just sort of said like you always sort of took care of your family. Can you tell us a little bit more what like childhood was like? What was that? I mean,
Sure.
And were some of those experiences what sort of led you into that idea of the medical field in general? But yeah, tell us a little bit about just like childhood and some of those experiences you had.
Yeah. So my mom was a single mom when she had me. And yeah, so I didn't come from a family with a lot of money. And my mom had me very young. And so she, you know, struggled as well as my grandparents to make sure that they could give me the best life that they possibly could. But, you know, that's not easy when you come from a family that doesn't have a lot of money, but they did their best. And then my mom met my stepfather, who then they had my sister when I was 10. So yeah, so I was an only child for 10 years. Wasn't too happy about becoming a sibling at first, but as soon as that child was born, her name's Grace, I knew that's exactly what I was supposed to happen. I couldn't wait to be a sibling. I loved her like she was my own child. My mom worked second shift. And my stepdad worked really early shifts, so they were really on separate schedules. And so, you know, when I got home from school, I was really also a caregiver, which I was fine with. I loved it. I loved hanging out with my family. We would go up north every weekend. My mom had my brother when I was 2, and my family always jokes about how when we would go up north, it's like a trailer park that we stayed in. But at the end of the road of the trailer park was this big flowage. And like Wisconsin is very much known for its lakes and rivers and flowages, and it was just beautiful. And there are so many pictures of me, you know, this 12-year-old girl with a baby on this hip and my sister on this hip, walking them down to the beach and, you know, spending 7 hours swimming with them. I loved swimming. That was like always my getaway from everything. And then when I got into high school, I found cheerleading, which I'm a total cheerleader at heart. You guys know how loud I can be.
That is very true.
Thank you, David. And so I found cheerleading, which was then my next escape from life. And, you know, for a while, I thought I wanted to do medical sales or, you know, something where I'm talking a lot. But I realized really quickly that I really love helping people. And it stems from my childhood. It stems from helping to raise my brother and sister, being there for my mom in her hard times as well, for my grandparents in their hard times. My grandma got cancer, lung cancer, about a year before I lost my legs. So it was just like, you know, it was just one thing after another. And so, yeah, so I always knew, I think I always knew I wanted to be some sort of caregiver. I just didn't know what that was. And even at the time, I thought my path was, you know, PA. But after what happened to me, I think that really led me on the journey that I am to being a nurse, and now a nurse practitioner, because I just graduated.
Congratulations.
License, yeah. Thank you.
Very cool.
So Nicole, you were well, first of all, David Harrell can relate a lot to the cheerleading part, and being inspired by that growing up, right, David?
Sure. Yes.
David, I had no idea.
Ready? It's true.
V-I-C-T-O-R-Y, that star kept no limits, that'll cry. V-I-C-T-O-R-Y, that star kept no limits, that'll cry. Yeah. Go, David.
All I know is be aggressive. Be aggressive.
Yes.
Bring it on, baby.
That's going to be our next talent for the talent show, David. We are so doing a cheerleading act. And now Alex has to be a part of it. I'm sure he's super excited.
Sick. Yes. I'm so sorry that I sidetracked this conversation in a very serious moment that you were giving us, Nicole.
No, that was good.
Do you think, well, you said you were so caring and for your family, and you knew that you wanted to go in that direction before your amputation, but when you woke up in the hospital and it was like, surprise, your legs were amputated, and the nurses that took care of you, do you think that was a major influence in what made you pick nursing? Because you kind of did it really fast after, right? Like you continued that course pretty much right out of the hospital.
I would say 150% they are the reason that I do what I do now. You know, when you wake up from something like that, I always had a million people in my hospital room, family, friends, just people I hadn't talked to in years came to visit me. And it was, you know, it could be pretty overwhelming when no one really knows what to say. No one really knows how to look at you. But the nurses, they were so different, you know, they looked at me like I was a person. And they never looked at me with pity, never ever, because they've seen it all. They're cardiac ICU nurses. They see, as morbid as it sounds, they see death every day. So when they don't see death, they're going to latch onto you, and they're going to make sure that they do every single thing they can to not only make sure that you survive, because it's no joke what I had and what was going on with me. And at the time, they had no idea why this had happened. I didn't find out till 3 months later that I had the genetic mutation. So, you know, they were just winging it at that point. And the nurses are the ones that are with you all the time. I mean, constantly. They're at your bedside. You press that button, they're in there. And I became friends with them. They were like family. Man, I was there for almost 2 months. And I'll never forget my one nurse, Rachel. She always knew when I like needed a break, you know, from people, from everything. And she just knew when to listen and not say anything. And she knew when to say something and not listen. And she was I'll never forget when I told her, I said, I don't understand why this happened to me. You know, I like put this poor girl on the spot, you know, like, I just was crying. I was in so much pain. And I really, truly felt like my life was over. Like I wished that I had just died and would have been a lot easier. And she said, Nicole, nothing in life is easy. When has anything, because I had told her like a lot about my childhood because, you know, we were there together. So we would connect on different things. And she's like, when has anything in your life ever been easy? And she's like, and how have you ever known the good times unless you've had the hard times? She's like, you are one of the strongest patients I've ever had. And not just because you beat this, but because I see your face every time your family walks in. I see your face when your friends come in. You put it on for them. You're being strong for them. She's like, if you can do that for them, you can do it for you. And she was like, you need to go back to school, girlfriend. You go back. I don't care what happens. She's like, if I have to push you in your wheelchair to every clinical, I will. And I was like, I was so changed by her. And I thought, wow, like this girl can, you know, help me to the bathroom, which is and you're like your most vulnerable, like worst feeling of your life. And she can still make me feel like I can do anything. Like that's what I want to do for people. And then to think that, wow, like I will really be able to connect with patients on a different level than a lot of other people can, other nurses. Not that they can't, but you know, I just have that different understanding. I know what it's like to be in the bed. Mm-hmm. And now I know what it's like to be at the bedside too. And I think that is what makes me a good nurse. And it's because of her and all the other nurses that I had that were just like her.
Yeah. It's what makes a good nurse and person and role model and everything at camp too. I mean, that is you. Rachel completely rubbed off on you.
Yeah,
you know, as far as that, because that's how you make all of us feel, Nicole, is good and like that we can and and just being around you is that high energy, inspirational feeling where like you don't want to stop doing what you're doing because you give off that vibe. So,
that's sweet.
Are you still tight with Rachel?
Yeah, I still talk to her.
Yeah.
She actually went to NP school about the same time that I did. She graduated a little bit before me. But yeah, that's how quickly. I'm very much a go, go, go person. I always was. I don't think I'll ever be able to change. And I think that's also what was really hard for me in the beginning, but also a blessing too, because when I lost my legs, it forced me to slow down. It forced me to look around me and go, oh my God, like look at this beautiful world I live in. Look at the beautiful people that I get to spend my time with. Like, how lucky am I? But also I wanted to I knew myself and I can get lazy real easily. And so I thought I need to get back on the saddle as fast as I can. And truthfully, nursing school is the reason that I walk the way I do today. It's the reason that I can be high energy at camp and do all the things I do, because it forced me to get up. I started nursing school in May of 2016. So it had not even been a year since I had lost my legs that I started school. And I was in Stubbies, which are short little legs that I'm sure many of the people that are watching this are familiar with. And if you're not, it's something that a bilateral above the knee can start in to like build that endurance and stamina and balance, blah, 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 all that fun stuff. And I started it in those. And, you know, there are many days, and anyone that wears a prosthetic or has a kid that wears a prosthetic, you know that there are just some days you do not want to freaking put those things on. They're hot. They're hard to walk in. And going to nursing school, it made me get up and walk in them, and it changed the way that I walked. It really did. And then I met camp. I met camp right before that, actually. That's what's even crazier. I was so afraid to apply for school because I thought, who would want me? Who would think that I could even do this? And I remember, you know, Cameron Clapp, one of our good friend mentors, he told me about Camp No Limits because he had asked me, what is something that I like to do before this? And I said, I used to do a camp for kids with cancer. I was a counselor and I adored it. It was like the highlight of my year. I loved it. And he's like, you need to go to this camp for kids with limb loss and limb difference. And I was like, oh my God, like, I mean, am I even qualified for that? I'm like, you know, I'm like 7 months out of my amputation. Like, I feel like maybe I should apply as a camper. I don't really know, but I'm really old. And he's like, no, just apply to be a mentor and you'll totally go, you know, get in, write my name on there. And I remember getting that email from Mary and I was so excited and so nervous. And I got there to Texas camp. That was my very first camp. And oh my God, like the minute I arrived, I was like, these are my people. This is what I was meant to do. And then seeing these kids, are you kidding me? Do things that I never could even imagine I could do with 4 limbs when I had them. I'm like, you better apply for school, fool.
Oh, were you using Stubbies at that Texas camp, or was that even before? Are you sort of kind of using them, but also using a chair? How were you kind of getting around mobility wise at that first camp?
Yeah, so it's cool because I was in Stubbies and no wheelchair at that time, but that was very new to me still. Because right before that, Hanger Clinic, one of Camp No Limits' big sponsors, they put on a boot camp for bilateral above the knee amputees. And that's where I actually met Cameron Clapp. And that was literally like a month prior to Texas camp. And at that time, I had been primarily using my wheelchair and only wearing the legs maybe like a couple hours a day and not really doing a lot of walking, like mostly sitting, because also I was extremely weak at the time still. I was on a lot of really harsh heart medications as we were figuring out what my heart could even handle, because we didn't even know if I'd be able to walk in prosthetics, that if my heart could even handle it. But I was like, well, I'm going to find out, because I surely don't want to sit in this wheelchair for the rest of my life. Not that that's bad, because for some people that works, but for me, it just didn't. And so camp was like my test run, you know, okay, here's your first trip, no wheelchair, with a bunch of other people who are doing the same thing as you. Like, this is going to be a test, Nicole. And it was so hot that year. Oh my
it's
gosh.
such a
It was
big camp,
so,
you
it was
know,
a
like
huge
everything's
camp.
spread out. So that was the
So
first
spread
time I
out.
met you, Nicole. I remember, and you
Yeah.
camp, because that's a huge campground for everybody who's been in Texas.
Yeah. So yeah, so I was on my stubbies for that whole camp, and I was out of them for 3 days after that. I was so tired, but it was so worth it.
Can you tell us a little bit, just kind of how you moved from that prosthetic into kind of what you're using now, and kind of how you treat your mobility, or how you think about mobility now after, what is this? It's really 4 or 5 years now.
5 years. It was just 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, in June. Yeah, so I started in the stubbies, which were very, very small and short. It's basically just a little foot that goes on the end of your leg. And I slowly got a little bit taller. And then I got these cool knees that are like, they're like walking on stilts, basically. They're locked when you walk, but when you sit down, if you don't have them, then your legs are like sticking out like this, and you like can't fit in cars or planes or anywhere. Or you're kicking people under the table, which is no fun for everyone's shins. So you press the little button and it flops right down, which were really awesome. And then as I was going to transition into my sea legs, I would wear little wrist weights on the bottoms of my stubbies to mimic the weight of what the sea legs would be like. And so I spent about 1.5 years in stubbies. And I still wear them today. I switch in and out of my stubbies all the time. You guys know, when I'm at camp, when we're doing energizers, I prefer to be in my stubbies. One, because it's a little bit easier to maneuver around in them, like, quickly, and we do all of our dances and stuff. And also, there is nothing like being at a child's level in those things. And it's even better when they've seen me in the sea legs first. And so they don't really, all of a sudden I'm at their level and they're like, oh, wait, that's you? And then they just like love it. They like want to tackle me, and you know, it's so much fun. That's like one of my favorite things. And I like to use them when I'm like bopping around the house, cleaning, or if I'm going on a hike. But my sea legs are wonderful for my job. Like, I could not do my job without them. They're not just like walking on my real, you know, fleshy feet and knees, but they are dang near pretty close. And if you trust them, which is the hardest part, if you trust them to do what they're supposed to do for you, then you are set. I mean, if there was ever a time to get your legs chopped, it's now, because the technology is unbelievable. Yeah. Right. I actually am really mad because I knew you guys were going to ask me about my story. And like, one of my favorite things is like makeup stories, you know? And I was going to be like, well, there was a pack of hungry gerbils. And I sacrificed my limbs to feed them.
That kind of leads
into, went that route.
It kind of leads into another sort of question, a little, because I was curious on sort of how you have adapted. Now, again, you were a little bit older when you had your limb difference, but when you do have those questions or staring, things like that, how do you negotiate that? Do you tell the gerbil story, or the some other kind of exaggerated thing, or sometimes do you choose who you'll tell the exaggerated thing if it's to get away with it, and then who do you tell the real story to? How do you negotiate those sort of things when those come up? Because inevitably the questions, the stares, all of that's going to happen, right? So yeah, what's your sort of game plan when those things occur?
You know, in the beginning, I was mortified when people stared at me. I would cry. I would get really angry, because I just thought, like, who are you to stare at me right now? Like, you have no idea my story, what I've been through, and that's what you're going to give me, a stare? And, you know, the ones where they're like looking like this, like they're trying not to look, but they're looking. And it used to really bug me until I met people like me which they made it very clear to me that, you know, people are just curious. And they're like, think about you, Nicole, when you had your legs. If you saw you now, would you stare? Would you look? Would you glance? Absolutely, I would. Oh my gosh, I'm like the nosiest person on the planet. I would totally stare. But what I've learned is that some people stare and then they say something. Hello. Oh, I really like your legs. Or, hey, what happened to you? And definitely I pick and choose. I'm pretty good at reading people, reading a room. So like one time there was this like giant, I was watching my sister play shot put practice, and I was sitting at this park and there was all these kids outside like after school, and they're all like looking and whispering, and I was just like not having it that day. I was just trying to watch my sister, and they all come up behind me and they're like, are you a robot? And I was like, no, I'm just a girl. And they're like, what happened? Where are your feet? You know, like these kids, and they're like, meh. And I was like, this is what happens when you don't listen to your parents. And they all screamed and like ran off in different directions. And I just laughed so hard. And like, you know, that's a moment where you're like, okay, you're messing around. But I find that the only way that we're ever going to change the way people stare at us, what people think about those of us that have disabilities, limb differences, amputations, is you got to educate them. You know, if I'm in the elevator and a mom is telling their kid not to look at me, I will say hello on purpose. And I will say, hi, have you ever seen this before? These are like my robot legs. And the kid, almost every time, the kid, oh my goodness. And the mom always says, oh, thank you so much. I'm so sorry. I'm like, don't be sorry. Don't be sorry for me. I'm fine. Be sorry for someone who's sorry for themselves, because that's not me. And that's most of us are not. Yeah, so I definitely pick and choose who I say funny stories to, who I educate. And you know, some days I just don't feel like talking about it. And so if I'm on a plane and I want to just like sleep, and it's always funny to me when I literally have my headphones in and I literally have, I'm like curled up and I'm like on the, and I'm like, and this person like, can I help you? Oh, I noticed your legs. Do you work for NASA? Right. No. And I don't feel like talking about it right now. I'm going to take a nap, but thank you so much. And I really hope you enjoy your peanuts. Good night. You know, I don't want to talk, and you don't have to. You don't have to. It's your body. It's your life. If you want to educate people, you can. I think it's great because I think that's what changes things, but you don't always have to.
I think, and that's such great advice, I think, for all of us, because I think it is important. If we want things to change, we have to continue to educate. And I think we also need to see more representation in arts media, in just in general stories, and in the world around us. I mean, the changes in education that you bring, like being a nurse and just doing your work, is a lot. So I think that's such great advice, that we do want to kind of educate when we can, but it also is our body, and it is our, you know, we can say like, listen, I don't really want to talk about it, and that's okay. Totally. That's okay too. Real quick, we have a few minutes left. I'm just curious, you know, we've asked this question with some of the other folks who've been here, but it's so interesting. You told us the story of Rachel having that conversation with you. If you, and you probably do play Rachel now, but if you were Rachel and you sort of, you were going to have to give advice to Nicole that's down, that's feeling like this is all over, what would you change? I mean, would you alter that advice at all, or would you sort of stay on that same script, or do you have something else that you can kind of add with perspective now, if you were back where Rachel was when she sat and talked to you at that bedside?
I wouldn't change anything she said to me, because I think what she said to me really changed me and changed the course. And I think it was really important, all the things that she said to me, for me to become exactly who I am now. But I guess if I kind of turned it into what would I tell myself back back then I felt, let me actually go back. Before my amputations, you know, I think like anybody, I didn't really appreciate life the way that I do now. And I would get hung up on the small things, and I would get really hung up on stuff that just doesn't matter. And I would think that, oh gosh, like at that time, this is the hardest thing I could ever go through. Why me? Why me? Why me? And so I would tell myself then is like, girl, you have no idea. You're going to go through so much harder things than this right now. And you're going to get through it because you just are. You're human. You are strong. You are a woman. Like, you are beautiful no matter what. I used to be so self-conscious. And then when I lost my legs, I got even more self-conscious, you know, in the beginning. And the person I am now, like, I could care less about that. I could care less about what other people think about how I look, what I say, who I am. So I would tell myself, be yourself, Nicole, and never be ashamed of it. No matter where you are in your life, always be yourself, because that will push you right through any hard time that you have. So
Absolutely.
that's probably the only thing I would add to it. Yeah. And stop eating hot Cheetos, because you'll lose your gallbladder because of it. I'd probably say that too.
Don't ever stop, Nicole. This is your favorite. You can't stop.
I have to. They're so bad for me. They're so good though.
Gallbladder.
Gallbladder, hot Cheetos. That's just my theory. That's my theory of why I lost my gallbladder.
Well, is there any advice? I mean, I think that's such great advice. Is being true to yourself, finding your voice, realizing that we're all going to have storms. We're all going to have all, you know, things that are going to happen in our lives. But is there any other advice that you would give maybe to our campers, to our families, just real quick, of any sort of parting advice as we wrap up this interview?
Absolutely. Don't hesitate to reach out to the resources that is Camp No Limits. Camp No Limits changed my life. It brought me to people that have allowed me to completely be myself, to learn things about myself that I never knew I was capable of. And whenever I have a problem or I'm down or I have questions, you guys are the people I reach out to. And so just know that we're here. Know that you have that resource, and please don't waste it. You know, get connected, go on social media, message me anytime, because that's what people like you did for me. And I want to do that same thing for them. And, you know, you're not alone. We're in this together. That's the beautiful thing about camp. You know, we're this big, dysfunctional, beautiful family of limb different and not limb different, and amputees and non-amputees and healthcare professionals and doctors and therapists and everything that you could, siblings, all of it, everything you could possibly think of. And so I highly recommend that you reach out at any time, because I'm glad I did.
Yeah, well, awesome. I think that's true. I think it is such a family that we sort of have created. And yeah, there's all kinds of elements to that. But what's great about, I think what's great is that we have these adult mentors and who've lived this variety of, they've lived a variety of different ways with different types of limb difference. And so they're negotiating, they're figuring things out. And then you have families that are going through similar things. Some families, they're kind of coming in from a new perspective, but they're going to be able to get advice from a lot of different angles and a lot of different types of folks. But Alice Brown, we've got about 3 minutes. Did you have any other question, or did you have any other
Nicole, I just want to say that you did tell our audience they can reach out to you anytime on social media. We do have several hundred millions of followers on here, so it might get overwhelming at times.
We're close.
So feel free to reach out to us for additional help responding to
Thanks, guys. I actually forgot how big this podcast, that's totally not a podcast, is.
Yeah.
So I probably just, my messages are just going to get flooded now. I mean, who is Ellen DeGeneres? Who, you know, David and Alex, you guys are the new ones.
Oh, stop.
And speaking of having a podcast that's totally not a podcast, we do have to thank our totally non-sponsors for allowing us to have this non-podcast. So the sponsor I'd like to thank really quick before we go, I would like to thank T-shirts. No specific brand of T-shirt necessarily, but T-shirts in general, because they're comfortable and they're breathable, and you can wear them anytime. You can wear one that's formal. You can put one of those tuxedo T-shirts on, and you could, you could be casual, but you could also be ready to party. And speaking of T-shirts, I don't know, you should go to the Camp No Limits website to check out some of this new swag.
Cool.
It's what we do. Camp No Limits. Go into the Camp No Limits store, check out some of the new T-shirts we have available. Help support Camp No Limits and continuing the work that we do. Nicole, thank you again so very much.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you guys. You guys are the best. Everyone watch the Totally Rad podcast. It's not a podcast.
All right. Yeah. You guys take care. We're going to play out some music.
Love you guys.
Love you, Nicole. Thank you.